Ethan Clark never thought much about dragons. His life revolved around the narrow streets of Astoria Heights, the hum of airships overhead, and the small balcony outside his apartment where he placed a shallow bowl of milk each morning. Most days, the balcony looked ordinary, except for the constant rustle of fur and a pair of sharp, amber eyes that appeared without warning. He had no idea the cat he fed was no ordinary feline. It began subtly. A flick of a tail here, a curious gaze there. The creature would linger at the railing, sometimes brushing against Ethan's leg, and sometimes disappearing for days at a time. Yet every morning, without fail, it returned. Ethan didn't ask questions. He simply refilled the bowl, murmured a quiet good morning, and watched the animal lap up the milk, purring faintly. One day, a soft tremor rattled the balcony railing as Ethan leaned on it. The cat crouched low, scales glinting in the sun, but the effect was subtle enough that he thought it was just his imagination. Perhaps the light hit the fur in a strange way. Perhaps it was the early morning haze. He didn't think more of it. By the third week, the creature began leaving small trinkets. A shiny pebble from the park below. A twisted bit of wire that Ethan recognized as discarded jewelry. Each item was placed deliberately beside the empty bowl. Ethan found it amusing, assuming the cat had a strange fascination with shiny things. It wasn't until the night of the first blood moon, when a ripple of strange energy rolled through the city, that Ethan realized the truth. He returned to his apartment late, tired from work. Moonlight streamed across the balcony. The creature stretched, its fur reflecting red light, and then it shifted, just slightly. A scale shimmered in the moonlight. Ethan froze. The creature blinked, slowly, deliberately, and the amber eyes glowed. Ethan stumbled backward. What are you?" he whispered. The cat leapt onto the railing, and its form seemed to expand, as if the night itself was pulling its shape outward. A small wing unfolded, then another. Its tail lengthened, curling elegantly around the balcony support. And then it spoke. Not in words, but in a voice that echoed in his mind, a warm hum vibrating like the softest thunder. "I am Sarilith. I am your charge." Ethan's heart stopped. A dragon. On his balcony. Not just any dragon. The last hatchling of the Dragon Queen. The only living descendant of the royal lineage that ruled the Skyrend Peaks, centuries old, whose wrath had once leveled entire mountain ranges. And it had been coming to him for milk. Sarilith blinked, tilting her head, and Ethan realized the creature's behavior had always been deliberate. The pebbles, the shiny trinkets, the quiet purring. It wasn't a pet. It was a test. And somehow he had passed. Ethan's apartment suddenly felt impossibly small. He stared at Sarilith, who curled like a cat but radiated ancient power. Her small wings folded neatly against her back, her amber eyes bright and curious. I just feed you," he stammered. "Yes." Her thoughts vibrated gently in his mind. "But you do it with patience, without fear. You have not fled, nor struck, nor tried to chain me. That is rare." Ethan swallowed. He had always thought he was just a lonely human with a fondness for stray animals. He never imagined that feeding a stray cat could be the first step toward bonding with the last dragon in existence. And as the blood moon reached its zenith, Sarilith stretched and yawned, exposing tiny, jagged fangs. A faint shimmer ran along her scales, lighting the balcony with a glow that felt like dawn breaking over mountains. She stepped forward, nudging Ethan's hand with her snout. "Tomorrow," she thought, "we will begin lessons." Ethan blinked. Lessons? How to survive, how to grow, how to rule. It was then he understood. This was no ordinary animal. This was the last hope of a dying dynasty, and somehow fate had chosen him to care for it. He leaned back against the railing, heart pounding, as Sarilith curled against the edge of the balcony, watching the city below. The Dragon Queen's only hatchling had found its human, and Ethan's ordinary life had ended before the night was through. The morning sun spilled across Astoria Heights, illuminating Ethan's small balcony in warm gold. Sarilith stirred from her curled position, stretching tiny wings that glittered like molten amber in the light. She yawned, and a faint, harmless wisp of flame escaped, curling lazily into the air. Ethan leaned over the railing with a sigh, preparing the milk bowl as usual. But today something had changed. Saralith's amber eyes were sharper, more alert, and she watched him as if she were assessing his every move. Observe. Her thoughts vibrated in his mind, soft yet insistent. Attention is the first lesson. Ethan froze mid-pour. Okay. Observe, he stammered, unsure if he was agreeing with her, or with himself. Saralith twitched a claw and batted a shiny pebble Ethan hadn't noticed the day before. It rolled toward the edge of the balcony and stopped just before the railing. Precision, she communicated. Even small actions matter. Ethan frowned. He hadn't realized feeding a cat could require such exacting skill. He nudged the bowl slightly to align with her position. She sniffed, then licked delicately, eyes never leaving him. Patience, she hummed, tail flicking. Do not rush. The world tests you constantly. Learn to wait. Ethan swallowed, heart racing. He had never considered a meal could be a training exercise, but now it felt like a lesson in survival. The hatchling leapt gracefully onto the balcony railing, small claws gripping stone without scratching. She surveyed the city below as though plotting, tiny amber eyes following every movement of humans, animals, and airships alike. Awareness, she instructed. Even small humans can be dangerous. Even small humans can be allies. Learn to judge. Ethan's eyes followed hers. He realized she wasn't just a baby dragon. She was a strategist. Every movement, every tilt of her head, every nudge of a pebble had meaning. Tomorrow we will move beyond simple nourishment, she told him. You will carry me, teach me, protect me. We begin the bond of survival. Ethan nodded, though she could not see it. I understand. For the next hour, he continued the morning ritual, carefully watching her behavior, noticing every twitch of her whiskers, every flick of her tail, every subtle change in breathing. Trust, she communicated at last, curling against his hand. You are beginning to learn trust. That is the foundation. Ethan laughed nervously. Trust? I guess I never thought feeding a cat could be such serious business. She tilted her head, small flame dancing in her mouth like a smile. Everything is serious when lives depend on it. The city around them hummed on obliviously. People rushed to work. Airships soared overhead. And yet, for Ethan and the Dragon Queen's only hatchling, the balcony had become a classroom, a training ground, and the beginning of a bond that would one day shake the foundations of kingdoms. By midday, Saralith had established a pattern. Observe, test, reward. Ethan followed diligently. Each pebble she left, each tiny flick of flame, each careful pounce was part of a lesson in vigilance and strategy. Your turn, she finally communicated, nudging a pebble toward him. Predict, react, decide. Ethan picked it up carefully, examining it as if it were a weapon, not a trinket. He placed it exactly where she had intended. She purred, an ancient, satisfied vibration that seemed far too big for her small body. You may live another day, she thought playfully, though her eyes glimmered with seriousness. Tomorrow we go further. Ethan leaned against the balcony railing, exhausted but exhilarated. He had fed a cat, or so he thought. He had learned patience, precision, and awareness, all under the silent tutelage of a dragon hatchling who was anything but ordinary. And somewhere deep in his chest, a small thrill of fear mingled with wonder. He was no longer just a human in Astoria Heights. He was the chosen companion of the Dragon Queen's only heir. When evening fell, Saralith curled at his feet, eyes closing, tiny scales shimmering in the last rays of sun. Ethan cleaned the bowl and whispered softly, See you tomorrow, Saralith. I will see you, she replied, and we will begin again. By the time the stars appeared, Ethan's ordinary life had changed forever. He didn't know it yet, but the balcony that had once been a simple perch for a stray cat would soon become the training ground for the last heir of an ancient dynasty, and for a human who would grow into its protector. The next morning, Ethan awoke to the faint glow of Saralith's scales reflecting sunlight through the balcony window. She had shifted slightly overnight, curling around the empty milk bowl, a tiny sentinel guarding the space as if she had never left. Her amber eyes flickered open when he approached, sharp and calculating, immediately assessing him as though he had passed a subtle test in his sleep. Observe, she hummed in his mind. The world does not wait for the unprepared. Ethan shivered, realizing that his casual daily routine had become an exercise in vigilance. Every movement mattered. Every action was watched. Even the slightest lapse in attention might earn a sharp claw swipe, or worse, disapproval that could echo in mental pressure far heavier than her small form suggested. He set down the milk carefully, noting her posture. Serelith was crouched low, tail flicking, wings tucked but quivering as if ready to spring. You think this is play, she communicated, but it is preparation. Ethan froze mid-step. Preparation for what? He asked aloud. For survival. It was then that he noticed the faint shimmer above the city. Tiny disturbances in the morning air, subtle tremors that humans rarely felt. Serelith's eyes tracked them with unnerving precision. Threats are everywhere, she thought, even in plain sight. You must learn to see them before they see you. Ethan blinked. He had never been trained for this. His life had been ordinary, alarms, deadlines, occasional inconveniences. But now, under the guidance of the Dragon Queen's hatchling, he understood that vigilance was a skill, one that required intuition, focus, and courage. Serelith hopped to the railing, balancing delicately, claws clicking against stone. She tilted her head toward the distant skyline, where faint shadows shifted unnaturally across rooftops. There. Ethan squinted. I don't see anything, he admitted. You do not yet know how to look, she hummed. Watch. Learn. He followed her gaze, trying to focus on subtle changes. The flicker of light on metal, a shadow that moved against the wind, the faint echo of soft wings. Slowly, he began to discern patterns. A courier drone diverging from its route, a rope swaying unnaturally on a distant tower, a faint shimmer in the air as if someone had cloaked themselves with a low-level mana spell. Serelith's tail flicked once. Good. Ethan swallowed hard. Okay, I think I see it. Perhaps. She nudged a small pebble toward him. Predict. He crouched instinctively, moving toward the edge of the balcony while keeping his eyes on the disturbances. Serelith mirrored him, wings spreading slightly, body tense but balanced. He felt an odd surge of adrenaline. Not fear exactly, but the thrill of being alive in a world he hadn't truly noticed until now. Suddenly, a soft whistle cut through the morning air. A signal he could barely hear. The hatchling's body tensed. Her wings twitched, her eyes narrowing. An intruder, she thought. Not yet a threat, but testing boundaries. Ethan's heart pounded. Intruder. Yes. He looked again, focusing on the subtle anomaly Serelith had marked. A small, humanoid figure moved across the rooftops, cloaked in muted gray. Its presence was faint but deliberate, probing the city as though seeking something or someone. Ethan realized with dawning horror, he was the someone. Do not panic, Serelith instructed calmly. You are under my protection. The tiny dragon leapt from the railing to his shoulder, claws gripping lightly, wings spreading to balance. Heat radiated from her body, faintly shimmering in his clothing. Her eyes glimmered with intelligence beyond her size. Trust me. Follow my lead. Ethan nodded, though his pulse was racing. Together, they crouched low on the balcony, watching the intruder with a mix of curiosity and wariness. He had never felt so connected to another being. Not just because of her intelligence, but because he understood, instinctively, that their survival now depended on coordination, trust, and timing. Move carefully, Serelith thought. The human world is full of unseen eyes. Not all who wander are innocent. The figure on the rooftops paused, scanning the streets below, then vanished into a shadowed alleyway. Serelith relaxed slightly but remained alert, tail flicking. Tomorrow we will train further, she hummed. Observation, prediction, response. The lessons grow as the threats do. Ethan exhaled slowly. He was still shaken, but a strange sense of exhilaration replaced his fear. Feeding a cat had led him to this. A tiny dragon guiding him through the hidden dangers of the city, training him without words, teaching him to survive in ways he never imagined. "You are learning," Seralith purred, curling slightly against his shoulder. "And soon you will be ready for more." Ethan leaned back, careful not to disturb her, watching the city awaken below. His ordinary life had vanished. The balcony was no longer just a perch for milk. It was a command post, a classroom, and the first step in a bond that would grow far beyond either of them. And for the first time he realized he wasn't just a caretaker. He was the protector of the Dragon Queen's only hatchling, and the lessons she would teach him would change everything, about dragons, about the city, and about himself. That night, the city did not sleep easily, and neither did Ethan. Seralith remained awake long after the lights of Astoria Heights dimmed, her small body perched at the balcony's edge like a jeweled gargoyle. The moonlight turned her amber scales silver, and her eyes reflected the stars with unsettling clarity. She was listening, not with ears alone but with something older. Ethan stepped outside quietly, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. "You sense something again, don't you?" he whispered. "The air is disturbed," she replied inside his mind. "Patterns are shifting." He leaned on the railing beside her. At first, everything seemed calm. Distant traffic hum, a few late-night airships crossing the sky, the glow of towers standing like silent guardians. But then he felt it too, a faint vibration beneath the wind, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. Seralith's wings twitched. "They search," she murmured. "For you, for what I will become." The words chilled him. She was not afraid, but she was aware, and awareness meant danger was real. Without warning, she leapt from the railing. Ethan's heart nearly stopped, until he saw her hover. Her wings, though small, beat with sudden strength, keeping her suspended a few feet above the balcony floor. Tiny sparks trailed behind her, glowing like drifting embers. "You can fly?" he breathed. "Not far. Not yet." She landed softly and turned toward him. Then she opened her mouth and released the smallest ribbon of flame. It wasn't wild or destructive. It was controlled, deliberate. The flame curved in the air like a glowing thread before fading. Ethan stared in awe. "Power without control is destruction," she said. "Control without courage is useless." He swallowed. "So what do you need from me?" She approached, placing one warm claw against his hand. The contact was intentional. Courage. The vibration beneath the city intensified for a moment. Somewhere in the distance, a faint shimmer rippled across a rooftop, too precise to be natural. The intruder from the morning had not been random. It had been a probe. Seralith moved quickly now, darting to the milk bowl. She nudged it with her snout, then tapped it twice with her claw. "Signal." Ethan blinked. "You want to send a signal?" "Yes." He hesitated. If something was searching for her, drawing attention might be dangerous. But Seralith's eyes burned with quiet certainty. This was not panic. This was strategy. "Okay," he whispered. She inhaled deeply, chest glowing faintly from within, and released a slightly stronger burst of flame into the empty bowl. The fire spiraled upward in a controlled column, no taller than a meter, before vanishing like smoke swallowed by the wind. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the vibration stopped. Completely. The air felt lighter. The pressure Ethan hadn't fully noticed lifted like a weight off his lungs. Seralith exhaled slowly. Message delivered. What message? Her tail curled around his wrist gently. That I am not alone. Ethan stared at her. You did that on purpose. Yes. You wanted them to know you have protection. She blinked once in approval. Predators prefer isolated prey. A quiet understanding settled over him. She hadn't needed him for strength or magic. She needed him for something far more powerful. Presence. A witness. Partner. A declaration that the Dragon Queen's only hatchling was not abandoned. From somewhere high above the clouds, a faint streak of light crossed the sky. So quick it might have been dismissed as a shooting star. But Seralith watched it carefully. Response acknowledged, she murmured. Ethan's breath caught. That was? Not a threat, she assured him. Not tonight. She curled at his feet once more, though her eyes remained open. For the first time since he'd met her, Ethan didn't feel like a bystander in something ancient and powerful. He felt chosen. Not because he was strong. Not because he was special. But because he had shown up. Every day. With milk. With patience. With attention. And that, apparently, was enough to earn the trust of a dragon. The city below remained unaware that something monumental had occurred on a simple apartment balcony. That a signal had been sent into the night. That unseen forces had paused their hunt. That a fragile alliance between human and dragon had just altered the balance of power. Serelith finally closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she whispered in his mind, softer than ever before, we begin true training. Ethan looked out over the skyline, heart steady now instead of racing. Whatever was coming, whoever had been searching, would find something different next time. They would find a hatchling who was no longer alone, and a human who was no longer ordinary. The following morning, the city seemed unchanged. Sunlight sparkled off the glass towers, merchants set up their stalls, and airships glided lazily along the currents. To the casual observer, it was just another ordinary day in Astoria Heights. But Ethan and Serelith knew better. The balcony felt charged with anticipation. Serelith's eyes gleamed brighter than usual, scales catching the light in shifting hues of gold and amber. She crouched low, tail flicking in calculated rhythm, wings twitching ever so slightly. They have noticed my signal, she hummed in his mind. The response is coming. Ethan swallowed hard. Who would respond to a hatchling's signal? Only those who understand what is at stake, she replied. Before he could question further, a soft shimmer appeared in the space above the balcony. At first, it looked like a distortion in the morning light, a heat wave dancing across the city. But then the shimmer grew denser, taking shape. A small figure hovering in midair, scales iridescent, wings folded carefully. Ethan froze. Mother? Serelith's thoughts vibrated with a mix of awe, longing, and an almost imperceptible urgency. A second later, the figure solidified into a miniature dragon, larger than Serelith but still young by the standards of her kind. Amber eyes locked with hers, filled with both recognition and relief. The Dragon Queen had come. Ethan's heart raced. He had always assumed dragons were myths, untouchable and distant. And yet, here she was regal, radiant, commanding, yet delicate in her attention toward her only hatchling, Serelith. The Queen's voice resonated not in words but in vibrations that Ethan could feel, low and powerful, gentle yet filled with authority. You have survived. You are safe. Serelith chirped, wings fluttering, and leapt toward her mother, landing on the Queen's scaled forearm. Ethan instinctively stepped back, careful not to interfere, but Serelith nudged his hand lightly with her snout, as if introducing him. This is the human, she communicated. The one who fed me. The one who stayed. The Queen's gaze shifted to Ethan. Amber eyes scrutinized him, and for a moment, he felt like every heartbeat in the city had been paused. All attention focused on him. You kept my child alive. Her thoughts resonated, powerful and deep. You demonstrated patience, care, and vigilance. Few humans could earn such trust. Ethan swallowed. I just fed her milk, he said quietly. Milk is meaningless to many, she replied, but your consistency proved your worth. Serelith chirped happily and nudged Ethan again. You are part of her world now. The Queen's presence continued, softer this time. Your bond is witnessed. Your training is not yet complete. There are dangers in this city and beyond that your care alone cannot shield her from. Ethan's pulse quickened. Training? Dangers. Yes, Serelith's mother confirmed. The city hides threats that you cannot yet see. The mortal world intersects with powers you do not understand. Your lessons have only begun. A gentle breeze carried the faint scent of fire and ozone. Serelith's wings fluttered as she adjusted her position on the Queen's arm. The sight of mother and hatchling together was mesmerizing, ancient, powerful, yet surprisingly tender. You will continue with her. The queen's voice stated in the subtle hum that Ethan felt more than heard. Guide her, protect her, teach her and learn from her. For the survival of her lineage and of this city, you are indispensable. Ethan nodded, a mixture of awe and resolve settling over him. He had never imagined that feeding a stray cat would evolve into this. A direct link to a dragon dynasty, a personal bond with the Dragon Queen, and a role that would define his life in ways he could not yet comprehend. The queen lowered her massive wings slightly and nuzzled Serelith, who chirped contentedly. She looked back at Ethan with a tilt of her head, as if silently acknowledging him. He realized, then, that this tiny human had earned his place in a world most humans could never touch. The next steps are yours to face together. The Dragon Queen's final thought lingered in their minds. Learn quickly. Danger approaches from the shadows, and you must be ready. Serelith chirped again, the smallest spark of fire lighting her mouth, flickering like a warning or a promise. Ethan felt it in his chest. He was no longer just a passerby in her life. He was a participant, a protector, and now, a student under the tutelage of both Hatchling and Mother. The queen spread her wings. The city below bathed in gold and shadow from their towering presence. Then, with a graceful beat, she lifted Serelith into the air. The hatchling chirped and waved a small claw toward Ethan before settling comfortably against her mother's chest. Ethan's heart pounded. He felt exhilaration, fear, and awe all at once. He had been chosen. He had been tested. And now, under the gaze of the Dragon Queen herself, he understood. The balcony where he had fed milk every morning was no longer a safe haven. It was the threshold of a world far larger, more dangerous, and infinitely more wondrous than he could have imagined. As they ascended into the sky, Serelith chirping happily beside her mother, Ethan whispered softly, "I'll be ready, I promise." And deep in the shadows of Astoria Heights, unseen eyes shifted, watching the human and his dragon charge, realizing that this small bond, formed from simple acts of care, might change the balance of power for all worlds to come. Days passed, but nothing about Ethan's life felt ordinary anymore. Serelith had been returned to the Dragon Queen's care, yet she insisted on visits. Each morning, she would leap from her mother's arm onto Ethan's balcony, wings buzzing softly, scales shimmering in golden light. Her amber eyes seemed brighter now, brimming with mischief and intelligence. "Good morning, partner," Ethan murmured, refilling the milk bowl. He had stopped calling her a cat weeks ago. Now, she was a hatchling, a student, and an unlikely teacher of patience, courage, and awareness. "Today we begin," Serelith's thoughts rippled into his mind. "The Queen has approved our lessons." Ethan swallowed nervously. Lessons in what? Control, observation, flight, fire, awareness. He frowned. Fire? Flight? Awareness? Ethan had never imagined his mornings would include any of that. Serelith's tiny claws tapped the railing, a deliberate rhythm. She was preparing him without words, testing his focus. He straightened his posture, heart beating faster than normal, and leaned slightly forward, matching her energy. Begin. The first task was simple in theory. Observation. Serelith perched on the balcony edge and focused her gaze on the distant city skyline. Ethan followed her lead, scanning rooftops, alleyways, and airship routes, noting subtle anomalies. A flicker of a shadow, an unusual sway of rope, a glint on a metallic surface. "Good," she hummed. "You see it. You anticipate." Next came fire control. She released a small wisp of flame from her mouth, just a spark, but it danced in the air, hovering like a living thread. Ethan's job was to replicate it, mentally, physically, and with focus. At first, he could only blink at it, the intensity of the heat startling him. "Focus," she instructed. "Energy follows intention." He took a slow breath and extended his hands. Tentatively, a small ember flickered from his fingertips. It hovered briefly, dancing like the tiniest candle flame, before fizzling out. Serelith purred softly. Not perfect, but controlled. Ethan exhaled, a mixture of relief and excitement. I did it, somehow. The next lesson was flight, or at least movement in the air alongside Serelith. The hatchling leapt from the railing, wings flapping rapidly, hovering effortlessly. Ethan instinctively leapt after her, arms outstretched, and stumbled slightly before catching his balance. She chirped in amusement and hovered above him, nudging his shoulder lightly. Balance, she thought. Coordination. Timing. Trust in yourself and in me. By the end of the morning, Ethan was exhausted but exhilarated. He had learned to anticipate Serelith's movements, to trust his instincts, and to manage his fear while standing beside a creature capable of untold power. The Dragon Queen appeared quietly on the balcony shortly after, her massive wings folding elegantly behind her. She lowered her head to observe them. Her gaze was sharp but approving. "You are learning well," she communicated, voice resonating in his mind. "You are worthy of this bond." Serelith chirped, nudging Ethan's hand with her snout. "The bond grows stronger. We are ready." Ethan smiled, realizing just how much had changed. He wasn't a simple human who fed milk to a stray cat anymore. He was a participant in a legacy that spanned centuries. A guardian, a student, and a partner to the last living heir of a dragon dynasty. As the sun climbed higher, casting long golden shadows across the city, Ethan looked at Serelith and the Dragon Queen. He understood fully now that ordinary life was over. In its place was a life of adventure, responsibility, and discovery. A life where every day would teach him courage, patience, and the meaning of trust. "Tomorrow we go further," Serelith whispered. "The city is only the beginning." Ethan nodded. "I'll be ready." And in the golden morning light, balcony and city below alike seemed transformed. A human and a dragon hatchling, bound by care, courage, and a single act of kindness, were beginning a journey that neither the stars nor the earth would ever forget.